Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Just give everybody a minute here. Where the time goes. Hello, Jennifer. I feel like I get my kids off to school and then I just blink and it's 1 o'clock. And hello, Wendy. How are you? Hello, Irene. Hello, Lorna. Anybody else who's here that I can't see? Sometimes it doesn't give me everyone's names, but I hope everybody's doing well and having a happy Thursday. You're good. That's good. Let's get organized here. Awesome. Has anybody picked up the paints or have paints in your stash? Hello, Debbie. Hey, Sandy. I've got a few of these that we're going to play with today, and these are the colors that Ranger has brought out of the vault, so to speak, and so they're limited, available for a limited time, and then I guess they are going to go away. So if there's some colors that you like, it's a good time to pick them up. We've got them all in the store right now, and we're going to look at the blue and purples today, but I'll give you a close-up look at all of them. Hello, Rosie. We've got a few other new things. We're going to make a card today. This card is so quick and easy. If you need a quick Mother's Day card or birthday card or anything like that, I'm going to show you how to put that together. And this technique might be my go-to quick card making technique. I almost felt guilty because it was so easy. Then we've got some new Stampers Anonymous. We've got a look at the new Spellbinders brushes. They're the mini brushes. They're called mini blending brushes. And they're really good price point. They're really very small and detailed. So I thought we'll have a look at those and just kind of show you what you'd use those for. I was just playing around with them yesterday. And yeah, we've got some new stuff. So why don't I show you what's new here on my desk, and then we'll make our card, and we'll play a little bit with these paints. So these are just a few techniques. And Tim Holtz has a really wonderful, extensive video on his channel, and he did lots of different techniques that you could play around with. New 49 and market in the store, Sandy just said, and it will be here in 1 to 2 days, and it's beautiful. So if you're a 49 and market fan, be sure to check that out. All right, let's move that out of the way for a minute. We've got Lisa Horton's embossing folders, and there's more in the shop. So if you search under Lisa Horton Crafts, and some of them have a die that comes with them, and then some of them are the 3D folder. So you'll be able to tell just by the description, and these are gorgeous. So we are going to use the Budding Bloom today. It's really, really 3D and detailed. So this is what's on our card. You can see how lovely that is. Rosie just linked to the Lisa Horton in the shop. I also have this card that I mistakenly embossed upside down. So Rosie and Virginia came to my rescue with a technique that you can do if you do that, but that was, you can still see the detail there. And let's see here. Then we have this sunflower one in front of me, but like I said, there's more in the shop, and this is gorgeous as well. You could use, it's sunflower is the name of it, but you could totally, like I could totally see this used with, you know, any kind of flowers. It's really pretty. New mama elephant is on the way. Thanks, Rosie. That's exciting, and it's really cute. Very cute. We also have this Hero Arts bold print cling stamp. This would be really nice for detail coloring. So pretty. I can think of lots of different ways to use that, and I think stamping with these paints, you could stamp the background and then spray it and have a really beautiful background. We've got new and restocked Robin's Nest gems on order. The Robin's Nest gems have been very popular. I have just a couple bottles here, but in the shop there's mixtures. So there's mixtures of colors. So be sure to check that out and watch for the restock. And then if you're coming to Carnival in Edmonton, we'll have them there as well. So we've got these Spellbinders brushes, like I said. We'll do a little bit of playing around with those. And I happen to have these Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous, a few products here. So these are the mini stencils. And in the shop, you can also find the larger individual stencils. So if there's one that you want in a bigger size or all of them, you can check there. And then these are the 3-pack that are minis. I love these. This just reminds me of paint swatches. And then this kind of a rainbow scallop, and then the hexagon. This kind of reminds me of bees, and bees are still super popular, so as well as just being a great graphic stencil, you could kind of use it with any bee images. This tiny print stencil, thanks Rosie. Rosie just linked the mini stencils. The tiny prints are really beautiful backgrounds, so these were just released. And up close, look how gorgeous those are. So pretty. I can't wait to use those. And then these are the note quotes. These might be out of stock right now, but if it's something that you want, send Sandy at scrapshotz.com an email. And the nice thing about Stampers Anonymous is that they don't retire their products. So even if they're on back order, you can still kind of get it. I really like these ones. I think these will be really good for swatching out any inks. Yes, so make sure that if you're coming to Edmonton, I guess 2 things. So if there's things in the shop that you see or know that you want, I would get your order in, whether you're coming to Edmonton or not, just so Sandy can get those shipped. We're heading to Edmonton on the 25th would be the setup. So you want to get that order in so Sandy can get that out to you before she gets everything packed up. And then if you are coming to Edmonton, you can just make a note in the comments section that you'd like to pick up there, and we'll have everything pulled and set aside. So if there's something that you wanted to make sure you had, then you make sure to get that. Let me just set these aside for a minute. All right, here's a look at the paints. So there's 5 different sets of paints. Yeah, the note quotes are really great. And in case I didn't show you all the sentiments, aren't they great? And they all fit in any of these sizes. So you've even got some Christmas there, some Halloween, Easter, kind of a good year-round set, and I really like the font. These are the ones that we'll play with today. So in this set, you've got your Wilted Violet, Blueprint Sketch, Stormy Sky, and Tumbled Glass. I like that in each set, it's kind of got an assortment of each color palette. And then there is the holder as well that you can pick up for them. So if you want that tin, and the tin also fits the mini ink sprays. So if you're looking for some storage, check that out. Hello, Teresa. Here are the pinks and reds. We've got Spun Sugar, Tattered Rose, Festive Berries, and Aged Mahogany. And I thought about doing my nails before I started, but I already had paint on my hands, so I just thought, you know what, we're gonna go with it today. This brown and grays, there's Old Paper, Brushed Corduroy, Gathered Twigs, and Pumice Stone. And then we have Dried Marigold, Ripe Persimmon, I love the oranges, Rusty Hinge, and Wild Honey. Beautiful colors. And then we've got the greens, and we've got Pine Needles, Lucky Clover. This one is, this is Crushed Olive, and I think this is Forest Moss. Yeah. So again, a really great assortment of colors. So let's see, let's do our card, and then we'll have our paints out, and then I can show you a few different techniques that we can do, and we can look at those blending brushes. Tamara, those are the Distress paints. And these are ones that had been retired, but Ranger brought them out for Tim Holtz for a limited time. So they made a certain amount. And if there's some colors that you like, you can pick them up, and they're sold in sets of 4. Yeah, Rosie's got the link there. So this is the card we're making. And like I said, it is so easy. It's definitely going to be my go-to quick card technique. Get a few things out here. And Tamara, I know you sent me a message, and I didn't get a chance to look at that. I also saw Tim Holtz is live on Saturday, so you might want to check that out. Let's see, and I think they've announced what's live on Saturday, right? If Sandy is still on. Oh yeah, the orange, I love the oranges too. So we've got we're going to get our embossing folder, and this one is the Budding Bloom. This is 3D. So if you're using your Universal Plate System and your Spellbinders Platinum 6, then you just use it the same way you would a Spellbinders 3D embossing folder, with your adapter plate and your base, and just run it through. And then I'm using, okay, this stuff has been out forever, but I think I forgot it was in my stash. Hello, Betty. And it is incredible. So this is the Dilutions Mixed Media cardstock, and it's from Ranger. This is 10 8.5 by 11 sheets. It works so nicely with sprays or paints or inks, and I think I'd just kind of forgotten about it, but I pulled it out and I'm really, really loving using it. So that's what we're going to use today. And we've got our paints. We've got a brayer. So this is the Tim Holtz brayer. And I noticed that there is a small size available in the store. Let's see what else we need. Okay, we'll put our sentiment on after, and we're going to use some Robin's Nest dewdrops and some lunar paste. So we'll get that out. And some glue. So the lunar paste, I'm using the silver lining, and I think you could really, depending on what color combination, you could just decide what lunar paste you wanted. But I felt like this just really highlighted that embossed image really well. So we're going to shake up our paints. They've got a little mixing ball in there, and there's a little flip cover, and you really don't need much of this. So I'm just going to put 3 drops on. This is Blueprint Sketch. Thanks, Betty. Super easy. And this is more than we'll need. So I always have, and we'll pull out the Stormy Sky. We'll always have, or I usually have some extra paper or tags or something like that, so that I can use up all the paints, because I know this is definitely more than I need. So usually, let's see here, we'll just pull in just a scrap piece of white cardstock. That will be our extra. So when I'm using the brayer, I don't want to completely mix all these colors. I want to get them on the brayer, but when I put them on my paper, I want them to be able to tell that there's separate colors. So I'm just picking them up with the brayer, and then I've got the brayer on my waffle flower media mat, and I find that it just gives it a little bit of give. And to me, this just reminds me of like a jelly plate background. How fun is that if you wanted a little bit more? And it dries almost instantly, because you don't have a lot on there. And I would say I would just leave that. Hello, Melanie. So I love that. It just gives us our beautiful background. You can see all those colors in there. We'll set it aside to dry for a minute. Then we can take our extra piece, and this is, you know, I'm just using this up. And you still get a beautiful background on this white cardstock. So I would just put that aside. I love die cutting stuff like this, or if I have a stencil, I'll show you after, we can go over it because the paints layer. So let's set that aside. And we don't really have that much left there. We could, it's still a little bit wet, so if you want, this is another piece of that mixed media cardstock. You could, yeah, I guess you could get like a little bit of a water effect, a watercolor effect. And we could just let that dry, and that can be a base for layering. Thanks, Melanie. Hi, Lisa. So let's just wipe this up. And I also love that this cleans up so easily. So I'm just wiping it with a damp wipe. So it's not super messy. And then I just wipe over it with my dry cloth. For my brayer, all I do is just wipe it off. So I don't have to, you know, take everything to the sink and wash it all. That's kind of just it. Okay, so this is our mixed media piece, and we'll dry it just for a second to make sure that it's dry, because we're going to run it through our embossing folder. But this paper is just so beautiful. It's not even that thick. It doesn't feel that thick, but it works really, really nice with any mixed media. So there's our piece. Hello, Cynthia, how are you? Here's our embossing folder, that beautiful Lisa Horton one. And we can tell which one is the top because we've got the indented areas, which means it's going to push out at the top. I'm just going to give the back of my paper a very little spray, just because it's a 3D folder with lots of dimension. And then we can put this in however you like, whichever direction. So I'm just going to run that through right in between my adapter plate and my base plate in the universal plate system. So here's our folder, beautiful. But I really wanted to accent those flowers because they're so pretty. So I grabbed the lunar paste. This is silver lining. And now, even if we get this wet, we spray it, anything, it's not going to move because once the paint is dry, it's permanent. You're good. But you didn't miss anything. We just brayered on some paint and ran it through the embossing folder. And you can always catch the replay if you want to see some of the new goodies in the shop. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of lunar paste. I don't want a big blob, so I'm going to rub it on my mat here just so that I have a coating. And then because the sponge is flat, when we rub it over, it's going to catch on anything that's raised and just give it that really nice burnished look. Can you see? Isn't that beautiful? I'm glad the camera is picking that up. And you can add a little more if you need to. The nice thing too about lunar paste is that if you did have a little bit of a glob or something, you can wipe it off with a wet towel. Yes, so beautiful. I know, it just pops. It's like magic. You need to get a little bit more. If your lunar paste is a little lower, you can just take a little bit out with a palette knife and put it on your background to pick it up. All right, I think that's probably good. I love that. You can see why this is so easy, but it looks amazing, doesn't it? Lunar paste as well is so easy to clean up. You can tell I don't like scrubbing things. Isn't that pretty? So gorgeous. All right. Try not to shake the camera too much. What's everybody been up to this week? Then I'll probably just rinse this out later. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wipe. My kids have just been busy with school and soccer stuff, and the week is just, it flies by before you know it. All right, then we have our background. I've got a black card base there. I'm going, can I use Vicky's silver? I don't think I have that, but I don't see why not, Irene. I would say so. I think anything that you can, you know, that has a shimmery tonic, has some of those mousses, those would look beautiful. I would say try it. I don't have the Vicky's Silver, but I don't see why you couldn't. Any kind of paste like that. You're just hitting those high points. Then I always like to turn it over if I have something that's a little dimensional, just so it sticks down, but I'm not pressing things down or rubbing the paste off before it's dry. So there's our card base. Then I have the Wonderful, and I'll show you what I cut that out with. This is the Wonderful Script Sentiments by Yana for Spellbinders. This is a really good one. So it's got hello, beautiful, wonderful, and you. And then you have the shadow of each of them. And then to cut it, it's the Prism Studio. This is the holographic, but there's a few different kinds in the shop, and it really cuts beautifully. So that's the Wonderful. I felt like that went really nicely with that silver. So isn't this is so quick and easy. I also like giving these kind of cards to teachers for teacher gifts. You could make a bunch up with different colors. And Rosie's just linked that Spellbinders die set. I added some of, here we go. I added some of the 3D foam strips. These ones are scrapbook adhesives by 3L. And there's I think there might be a few different kinds in the shop. And then, oh thanks, and Rosie just linked to the Prism Studio products. Then I grabbed some blue and some purple of these Robin's Nest dewdrops. So there's the mixes that are in the shop are different than I have here, but you get the idea. There's some that are teardrops, some that are diamonds. There's larger, let's see here, larger circles and smaller ones. And I'm gonna grab a couple of the purple out. And the bottles, I love the bottles. They're so cute. So Sandy said we're getting a few more of these in. And restocking. So I like having some small and some large, and there's various color assortments. So if you search for Robin's Nest, I don't know what I'm doing here. I had something stuck in the cover. And you can use glue dots to put those on. You can use liquid glue. And then I've got the Studio Cadia gem. I don't know what it's called. I want to say gem picker, but I think that's a different thing. But it's the embellishment wand, I think. Which is great. It has this wax tip, and I find, especially if you just warm it up with your fingers, then it works really well picking up your sequins. And literally that is it for that card. So that's why I thought, you know what, we have time to do some playing around with this paint. Look how pretty that is. Like, it's just, no one would imagine you could make that card in like 10 minutes. It's beautiful. And depending on where you put the embossing folder, you can kind of adjust where your flower images are. Thanks guys for the hearts. All right, let's look at these different techniques. So let's get out a little bit more of this paper, and then a piece of black cardstock as well here somewhere. We'll just use this foundations paper that we were playing with last week. So the paint, like I said, Tim Holtz does a really, really great demo of how the paints work and different techniques. So I just watched his video, pulled a few ideas, and thought, let's just play with those. And so for this first one, we'll just pull. We're doing this one right here. So we'll pull one of these stencils from that mini stencil set. It's number 55, and Rosie had linked it earlier. And I've got this is the media matte. We're gonna just give our paint a quick shake. I don't think you really have to shake this a ton. This one is the tumbled glass, so I'm just taking the lightest. So you could do this with any of those color combinations and just put colors that match. So for this technique, I'm just using a sponge and sponge dauber, and I've got the paint right on the background, and I'm going to dab it in to get it onto my sponge. So you can see you don't use a whole lot. And then I'm just holding my stencil. I've got the mixed media paper, and I'm adding this. So the paint is going to dry permanent, and it's going to create a little bit of a resist. That's what our base is. So that doesn't take very long to dry. You're just putting it on a fairly light coat, and then you've got this extra left over, so that's when you could just come in with any kind of extra. This is our background foundation, black foundations paper that we were just playing with. So you could use a stencil, you could brush this on, and once this is on, it's just going to stay permanent. So I like to have a few pieces around of paper that I'm just going to add things to, and then at the end I can just cut them up. And we did this when we were playing with the Vicky Bouton Cosmic watercolors, in case you're looking for that video. Then I'm just going to give this a little wipe, and all I'm going to do with this, because we'll probably we'll use this again, so I'm just wiping it off so that it doesn't dry hard. And I think I should get a new baby wipe. There. Or if you had a bunch of different sponges that you were using, if you just put them in a wipe and kind of set them to the side, that's going to keep them from drying out. So we've got our base there. Then for this one, we may as well do this while we're just waiting for that to dry. So for this one here, we've got another piece of the mixed media paper. And this one here is creating kind of a ghosting effect over top. And Rosie just linked to the Cosmic watercolors in case you want to check those out. So for that, all I'm doing is covering my paper with a background of paint. And you really do not need much at all for that. So I'm putting just a tiny drop there, I'm getting this brayer. I really, really like the brayer. And if the small is in the shop and if a large is something you want as well, then you can request that Sandy order that in for you. So that's our base. And you know what? I am going to put just a tiny bit more of that on. We're not adding any water in at this point. But I really love how this just looks kind of like that gel print background effect. And it's so, oh yes, my stencil. It's so quick. Thanks, Betty. At least, even if you forget to wipe it, the paint is not really textured. So if you didn't have a large, like globs of it on there, it shouldn't affect anything. But it's still, even though I left it for a bit, it wiped right off, which is nice. So let's wipe this up. And there is lots of color there. If I decided that I still wanted to go back in and pick up some color, like we still have this is our little scrap piece. You could just dry this and dip it back in again. I like this because you never know kind of what you're ending up with. And I'm just partially drying it so it's not super wet because it was quite wet. And then you start getting these really fun watery splotches. You could dry that again and then dip it in again to get more layers of that. But it's just pretty. So I'll set that aside. And then we can just clean it up with our wipe. This is pretty much dry. And let's wipe off our brayer. So we still do have our challenges open in the Scrap Shotz paper crafting group from International Scrapbook Day. I know some of you guys have had beautiful projects in there. I have to go back and look again. And there will be a grand prize, so that's open till Saturday. You can check in the album. There's all the instructions on how to enter. Okay, so we have this. This is dry now. So this is our background. Hello, Lorraine. Hello, Elizabeth. Oh, and Sandy does have the large in stock. So the large is the one I was using. That was the brayer. And she has that in. You have a couple more to do. Yes. I've got some beautiful, I have paint on there, which that's fine. So we're going to go in now with some stains. I've got Salvage Patina and Prize Ribbon. So I'm going to spray a couple sprays directly on here, and then we'll use some water. I don't want this too wet, and I will have to use my heat gun. You know what, while we're waiting for that, so I don't have to have that on quite as long, we'll set that aside, and then we will do our ghosting technique here. So what we're going to do is take a lighter color. We've got the purple, so then we can go with, we'll grab our tumbled glass, yeah, there's like 5 or 6 different, 5 I think, challenges, and it's been really fun seeing everybody's take on that challenge. So I'm just putting some paint on my mat, and then what I'm going to do is layer it over top. And my sponge is still a little bit damp, so that's good because you do want your paint to be not completely dry. Then we can go in. We've got our stencil here, and what we want to do is, my wipe is not super wet, so what I'm doing is just lifting up some of that paint that we just laid down, and then when we pull our stencil off, look how it lifts that paint, because the paint was still wet on top, but the paint underneath was dry. So you can see how you could get beautiful layers. 6 challenges. Thanks Irene. And that's super easy. And then you could go ahead, there's not any real texture on that, so you could go ahead and stamp over that, would be beautiful. Stamp a background. Just really easy things that you could do for layers. And then you just set that aside, and once that's dry, that's permanent. We're still drying here, so we'll just, I'm going to pull my heat gun out, but I was just trying to avoid. There, we'll let that dry for a second. Avoid having it on for too long. So this was our paint that we had on the background, and I just wanted to show you how you can layer the paint. So this was the ghosting technique, and then you can also do paint layering, and you can do it on black cardstock as well, which is nice. So I've got a light background here. On this one I had the dark purple, so I can go in with something darker like Blueprint Sketch, and I'm going to put a little bit there. I'm just going to use the same sponge, and then let's grab another stencil. And again, I like to just dab the background. Now, you don't need to have your sponge wet at all for this. Mine probably still is a little bit wet, so it might be a little lighter than if you didn't have it wet at all. And I'll bring some down here so you can see what it looks like over the paint. And I feel like oranges would look amazing as well. So look at this, that's pretty. You've got it layered over the white, over the light color paint, and then layered over the background. Looks gorgeous as well. And then because you have this on your stencil, we are going to wet it a little bit, and then let's just take a piece. I'm going to cut a piece of this mixed media cardstock down a little bit. And then I'm just going to lay that in and see if we can pick up any of that paint. I don't know if it was too dry or not, but we're going to try it. Oh yeah, it did work. Isn't that pretty? So that's just using leftover paint from the stencil and adding water and then creating a background. So once this dries, you could then do this same technique that we're doing here. So let's get this wiped up. And it cleans very nicely. We can take our little scrap piece that we've added the purple to, and we can just pick up this, a little bit of this. If you dry in between your layers, you're going to get a really nice water droplet effect. So this is just our scrap piece that we keep adding to. I'll just wipe that up. And then this, I think we're done. We're done with the paint, so I'm just gonna throw that right in my water. How do the distress paints compare to Dina Wakley paints? I haven't used, I did just get some, Betty, and I'm not sure. So I will have to try kind of these techniques and see. If you have the Dina Wakley ones, try them out for sure. I am not sure what's different. I think the distress do kind of react with water, and I'm not sure if that's a specific property. And if anybody knows, let us know. So we're going to dry this, and you can see the light paint that we put on, that tumbled glass in the background. And because that paint is permanent, it's not going to move when we have these sprays. Dina Wakley has a thicker paint. Okay, this one is definitely not thick. You can get it moving around for sure. You just don't know what you want to invest in. Yeah, that's fair. And Dina does a really good job too of educating on her products. If there's ever any of those that you're looking for and want Sandy to bring in, then just let us know as well. I think it depends maybe what colors you like, or it depends on what techniques you want to do. I like the distress colors, so that's probably one factor. I kind of have an idea about what colors go together and what I like together, and so that's one less step that I have to think about if it's a distress product. All right, so we have got a really nice background of colors, and this is going to look different than our other one. You're going to always have a different effect because you're never really going to get the same thing. Isn't that pretty? And then you can still see that resist coming out of the background. Let's wipe this off. Now we could do the same with this. We could put our sprays over. This is a little bit lighter because we had the water on it, but we could still play around with a similar technique. And this is pretty much dry. So now what I'm going to do is come in with my inks. So I do like that I can grab my inks, grab my other products that are in the distress line, and know that I can mix them without thinking too much about it. We've got Rustic Wilderness here, and I'm just coming in and adding ink right over top of the paint. And then I'm going to add some prize ribbon. And I'm adding it fairly heavy. That paint is always going to show through, especially because you have the inks and they are translucent. But then what I like to do is come in and spray. It makes sense. That's good. Thanks, Lorraine. I keep touching my face and I'm pretty sure I have ink. Okay, I'm just going to spray some droplets on here and just let that sit for a minute. And as you let it sit, the water's reacting with both the stain as well as the ink, but not the paint. So it's just, you're just getting that water effect with all those little water droplets. And after we let it sit for a minute, then we can come in and lift a little bit of that off. Let's see, the last thing that I wanted to show you with the paint is that you can come in with any of your metal embellishments. And these are some of Tim's word plaques, but there's different ideology, or you might have some metal embellishments or stuff in your stash. I know I have a container of metal things. This one just says lost and found. It's an older one. Hello, Jane. So I want to take a little bit, we'll do the stormy sky. And so anything metal that you have, this is going to work. And I'm just dabbing my sponge in that, and then I'm rubbing it over just to hit those high points. And look how it just adds, it just kind of adds that almost vintage effect to it. So that's another nice way to use your paints. Into my bucket. Then let's take a paper towel. I need a drink here. And we're just going to dab up those water droplets, anything that's not dried. And then we can dry it. And look how pretty that is once you start drying it and getting those layers. So I really love this technique. So isn't that nice? So pretty. Wendy, you were in the same boat, so you bought a couple different ones. That's a great idea until you found the ones that you love. Yeah, do some research, watch some videos for sure. Yeah, I love the look of this just because there's so much dimension going on. Yeah, that's really good tip, Wendy. Thank you. And the last thing that we're going to do, so let's move this out of the way. Is just look at those blending sponges or blending brushes. And move this stuff. So I've got this stamp wheel, which I stamped. This is not in the shop, but there's lots of Pink Fresh or Altenew that have the stamp set and then the stencils to go with it. So I stamped it, but I'm gonna leave it on just to do some ink blending, which is another nice bonus for having this stamp wheel, is that you have this sticky surface, and if you want to hold your stencils, it's going to work. So when you have the stencils that go with the images, lots of times they have those various layers. So this one has 5. We won't do them all, but just to get an idea. And then you can turn them over and kind of see which one. So number 1, I know that would be our lighter color. It's also nice to be able to add extra colors as well. So let's just come in here. I may have to turn this a little bit so that I can fit my stencil on here. There we go. So it's kind of nice because it just will stick and stay in the right spot. So if we have our inks, I have these Ulta New ones. So if I wanted to go in with a light, say if we wanted to do the reddish kind of pink. So if I have usually if I just want to do the full stencil, I'll come in and just use a larger stencil brush and just go over the whole thing. And this is not the right color because I had a different color on this and I obviously didn't wash it off. But that's okay. We're making a new color today, and it's just for demo purposes. So with any stencil, even if you don't have a layering stencil, this idea will work. So you would do your main stencil area, and then I usually just give it a wipe off just with a dry cloth. And then say if you wanted to do a little bit of extra color, I would come in with my brush. So whichever size, you've got 3 sizes. And I think the price point is really nice on these. So if you wanted to have one for each color, you could do that. But this just allows you to come in and really add detail in the areas that you want without having to mask anything off. So you'll see when I pull this off that we can see both of those colors. And then we can give them a better clean after. Custom blend, that's right. This one is called Wonderful in Every Way. If it's something that you want, just let Sandy know and she can probably order it in. It's probably, I think we had it, and we may even, I'm pretty sure we had it at the show. So for some reason I thought it was in the shop. But anyway, if it's something you want. So you can see that even though we just did 1 layer of stenciling, just by adding that second color on the same stencil, it just gives it a really, really nice dimension almost, or shading. And then, so number 2, that would be our main flower. Let me see what other ones. You can kind of tell that would be, okay, that would be the inside. And then you've got 2 different leaves. So say if you wanted to do then the third, well, let's do this color. I'm gonna try and wipe this off. I think I need to wipe it with a wipe, but I don't want it to be wet right now. So we're just going to lightly wipe it and see what happens. This is the second color in that Altenew set. Okay, so that actually worked, just wiping it onto the cloth. And this will be lighter than that other layer just because of our ink blend. I love these flowers with the stencils. I think there's so many different combinations that you could do. And then when you come in with especially those blending brushes, you can give that effect that you would have with, like, say if you're watercoloring or coloring with Copics, you can still get that shading on any of the edges that you want. Okay, so we have just a base layer down, and then we can go in with that next color. So you could leave this and go on to your next stencil, or you could come in, because you have the blending brushes, which I would just wipe off in between. And then I would go to my next color and add just anything around the edges. And I'm kind of keeping it straight up. And then you have different sizes. So if you had a really small area and you wanted to go in with a really small, you could do that. So I find that I would normally do this with, like, try to get in there with a blending brush, but I think that these are really nice and detailed, and so you're able to kind of get that shading without worrying that you're getting it over too big of an area. And obviously this is like the pink and the, I guess they kind of go. But again, you've got those areas of shading. So lots of different shading effects. And then that you would put this piece on and get a darker shading. So then we may as well finish the flower. So then I would come in with the third color now and go over everything with the third color. So even if you have, say you have a circle stencil, you could stencil it in one color and then go around the edges with the next darker color if you're using these, or if you're using Distress inks, or the Pink Fresh inks come in the 4-pack as well. And go in with your darker color just to shade. So then I would just go in now with my darkest color, because that's the last layer of that flower stencil. And if you just want to add a little bit more, and say you want to use this really small detailed one, you can, or you could go right in the center. And can just add your shading wherever you want. This works really well on those little tiny areas. So next week, I'm doing a class on Thursday. So what I'm going to do is do my live on Friday of next week. So Friday, still 1 o'clock, but it'll be moved to Friday. And Sandy will pop on live, she said Thursday, because Lawn Fawn will be in the shop, the new mini release. So you'll find that in the shop Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Mountain Time. And so isn't that pretty? It just adds just a little bit more shading. So Sandy will pop on live at some point just to show off the new Lawn Fawn, I think. And I will be live on Friday at 1 with whatever we come up with. So that's a look at the blending brushes, at the paint. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know. I'll check back on the comments. I'm really liking the paint and the different techniques that you can do with it. I think that is really fun. And the colors are all in the shop. And if there's anything that you're looking for, sorry, I just realized that there was some comments there. Yes, and it definitely is very artistic, Melanie. Stamp wheels are coming in. Thanks, Betty. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, all the moms, the people who are caregivers, happy Mother's Day on Sunday. And hope you have a wonderful, relaxing weekend. Get some crafting in. Enter the challenges before the end of the day on Saturday in the Scrap Shotz paper crafting group. And check any of the new stuff out in the May 1st category in the shop. And thanks, Rosie. Have a great week, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.